Hello and welcome to another year in review. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as it helps out the channel a lot. This year in review is for the year 1933, which was a pivotal year in the history of Looney Tunes. As with the previous videos, I'll be going over my overall thoughts, my favourite cartoons, my least favourite cartoons, an animated showcase, and a conclusion. So without further ado, let's get on to it. Before we discuss the history of 1933, let's go through the cartoons that were released. The first cartoon was The Shanty Where Santa Claus Lives.
They're taking tears and turning them to joys in the shanty where Santa Claus lives.
Bosco in Dutch. One Step Ahead of My Shadow.
It's springtime, it's lunchtime, a happy boy at all time. I was step ahead of my shadow.
Bosco in Person. Young and Healthy.
I'm young and healthy, and I've got charms. La 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 la.
Bosco the Speed King. The Organ Grinder.
Got a monk, he whistled and talked. That's how I first began. I bought a funny old music box. Now you got the organ man.
Bosco's Nightmare.
I like to fight and in armor bright, sing merrily my lay. Wha-da-da-doo-doo-doo-doo-ba-ba-ba-bum.
Wake Up the Gypsy in Me.
Give me the haunting call of the sea. The sky above, one will hum. Wake up the gypsy and me. Hum, hum, hum.
Bosco the Sheep Herder. I Like Mountain Music.
I like mountain music, good old mountain music, played by a real hillbilly band.
Bew Bosco. Shuffle Off to Buffalo.
You go out and pack your clothes, you go get your these and thoses, and away you'll go. Oi, oi, oi. Oh, if you're going to shuffle, shuffle off to Buffalo.
Bosco's Mechanical Man. The Dish Ran Away with the Spoon.
Till the dish ran away with the spoon. On a rainy day, the plates they play and they dance to a sweet little tune.
Bosco the Musketeer. Bosco's Picture Show. We're in the Money.
We're in the money.
We're in the money.
We got a lot of fun. It takes to get along.
Buddy's Day Out. I've Got to Sing a Torch Song.
I've got to sing a torch song. Lord, that's the way I feel. When I feel a thing, then I can sing. It must be real.
Buddy's Beer Garden.
It gives good cheer to drink my beer.
Buddy's Showboat. And Sitting on a Backyard Fence.
Sitting on the backyard fence.
1933 was a pivotal year for Looney Tunes. For the first two-thirds of the year, it was still business as usual, with Hugh Harman directing the Bosco shorts and Rudolph Ising directing the Merry Melodies. From time to time, they would receive directing assistance from animator and future longtime Looney Tunes director Friz Freleng, though he would remain uncredited in doing so. Eventually, Harman-Ising would cut ties with Leon Schlesinger due to disputes over budgets. The low budgets had forced Harman-Ising to take shortcuts with reusing animation from other shorts and short animation cycles on certain actions in order to save costs. Harman-Ising, having learned how Walt Disney lost the rights to his cartoon character Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, kept the rights to Bosco, so when they stopped making Looney Tunes cartoons for Warner's, they took Bosco with them. Eventually, the pair would make new Bosco cartoons at the animation studio over at MGM, with the later cartoons featuring a completely new design for the character. The last cartoons that would be released from the Harman-Ising studio would be Bosco's Picture Show and We're in the Money. Leon Schlesinger was now left without a star character, as the Bosco cartoons were doing quite well at the time. Rather than outsource the animation again like he had with Harman-Ising, he set up his own studio on the Warner Bros. Sunset Boulevard lot. Some of the animators that worked with Harman-Ising were brought over to this studio, including future Looney Tunes directors Bob Clampett, Friz Freleng, and Bob McKimson. Leon Schlesinger also hired Tom Palmer, who had originally worked at Disney as an animator, to be the main director at the new studio. The first thing the new studio needed to do was to create a new starring character. Palmer ended up creating Buddy, a young boy with a girlfriend named Cookie, along with other characters. Palmer made 2 Buddy shorts and 1 Merry Melody short, however these were rejected by Warner's. In turn, Leon Schlesinger fired Palmer and had Friz Freleng rework the shorts, including combining the 2 Buddy shorts into one. Disney story artist and Disney comic strip artist Earl Duvall had also been invited over to the studio at about the same time. By the time he arrived at the studio, Palmer had already been fired, and Duvall would end up directing the rest of the shorts that would come out in 1933. With the shorts themselves, there were a few highlights this year. Shuffle Off to Buffalo and We're in the Money, while being unremarkable cartoons in themselves, would have their songs used again and again in later Looney Tunes cartoons, mostly as instrumental music cues. In Bosco's Picture Show, we would have the very first appearance of Hitler, and it certainly would not be the last time we'd see him. In the same cartoon, Bosco is alleged to have said a dirty word. The official line here is, "You dirty fox," but some believe Bosco says otherwise, as a parting shot from Harman-Ising to Leon Schlesinger. And despite being researched into, there's no definitive answer as to what was actually said in that line. And finally, with I've Got to Sing a Torch Song, while not being the first short to feature celebrity cameos in Looney Tunes or otherwise, was a short that featured many celebrities at the time, a theme which would be revisited later on in a few Looney Tunes cartoons. And now on to my overall thoughts. This year was another mixed bag, though it's understandable given what had happened this year. Things started off as usual from the previous years, with a few highlights here and there. The Bosco cartoons and the Merry Melodies would mostly stick to a formula, but the cartoons that actually break the formula would end up being the best and most memorable of the year in my opinion. Once the new crew took over, it started off rather badly, though by year's end, things did start to pick up again. To be honest, this year in Looney Tunes would be more memorable for the changes on how the cartoons were actually produced and the introduction of Buddy, rather than the cartoons themselves. Now on to my favourite cartoons of the year. It was a tough choice this time around, as there were actually a few cartoons that were quite good. Now starting off with Bosco, my favourite that was consistently good all round was Bosco's Picture Show. This cartoon, even if you don't get some of the celebrity cameos, is a time capsule of what theatre going was like in the early 30s with the Great Depression in America. And it's funny, which is the most important thing. It's also the best Bosco cartoon in my opinion, and being the last one means that while the series has had many ups and downs, at least it went out with a bang at Warner Bros. Another great cartoon released this year was from the Merry Melody series, with Sitting on a Backyard Fence. It felt like a proper Looney Tunes cartoon the entire way through and had some very funny moments here, and it was definitely a sign of things to come. With Buddy only having 3 cartoons released this year, the choice is a little easier, and my choice would be Buddy's Showboat. Racist elements aside, it has some really funny gags, and you can see that they're trying to create some sort of formula and get Buddy back on track after that ordinary first cartoon. And now on to my least favourites of the year. If you've been listening to my commentaries, you'll find that it's not surprising that my least favourite Bosco of the year would have to be Bosco the Sheep Herder. It's not the absolute worst I've ever seen, but it was definitely a boring outing for Bosco, with very tired jokes and not much of a story. Now, as for the Merry Melodies, We're in the Money would be my choice, and it's a shame because the song is great and would later on become a Looney Tunes staple, but I found it to be mostly dull, and the last third reuses a ton of animation from an earlier short. It is the last Harman-Ising cartoon released by Warner's, so maybe Harman-Ising just didn't care anymore. And in news that should shock absolutely nobody, the worst Buddy short of the year is definitely Buddy's Day Out. The character design and personality of Buddy are the least of this short's problems. Aside from the one gag at the end, this was painfully unfunny. Admittedly, I do have a morbid curiosity as to what the original version that was actually rejected by Warner's was like, though that footage is probably lost to time. This is not only the worst cartoon of this particular year, but it's also one of the worst Looney Tunes cartoons ever made in my opinion. And now for the moment you've been waiting for, an animation showcase of the best and funniest and weirdest moments of 1933. A few of the cartoons have some sound issues, so I do apologise for that, but without further ado, here are those moments.
Oh, come on now. Is everybody happy?
I like to fight and in armor bright sing merrily my lay. I'm young and healthy.
nonsense. The boys are mixing it up in the center of the ring. Wow! What a wallop! The referee is down. Now he's up. He's down.
Gonna get you. You're going to a loose cow venture. You spend all the time you bum swinging into one of the big ones.
Famous screen lover on European vacation. Aha! Now the lead by a nose, and it's a close race.
Am I mortified? Am I mortified? The dirty fuck! Stop, you cur!
It's time to get the gang together by the corner store and sing away our troubles like we used to do before. When things went wrong, we'd sing a song. We were so happy then.
Come on, fellers!
But I must say that the can't be turkey is raw by cranky. I like mountain music, all good old mountain music, played by a real hillbilly band.
Ole, ole, ole. Ole.
Bam, boys! Bam!
Are you ready, my lads? 1, 2.
I've got to sing a torch song to summer fire, 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 for the torch I bear is burning there right in my heart, my heart.
Oh, hello there, Amos.
Hello, Dandy. How is you? Wow!
Am I blue? Am I blue?
I'm young and healthy, and I've got charm.
Possible to put nobody mind of the music of the organ.
Die, nothing to it, but he's got a rhythm there. Makes you do it with him there. Yes, sir.
He's a music man.
He plays by hand.
And he has rhyme and jazz like a candy stand.
My nature to be a king and
Hello. Hello, sweetheart. Oh, boy.
And so ends the review for one of the more transformative years within Looney Tunes history, and it certainly wouldn't be the last year of major changes. So thanks very much for listening, guys, and take care.